Welcome to the Criminologist Podcast. Our goal here is to educate and enlighten our listeners, focusing on the latest and greatest evidence-based interventions to help individuals desist from a life of crime and delinquency. And not only those factors which drive folks into crime, we also look at the reasons why people exit a life of crime. Also, we attempt to paint an accurate picture of that journey from the perspective of the justice-involved individual. Too often, our perceptions of those involved in the system are tainted by media-driven caricatures created to sell newspapers or movie tickets. This adds little to a healthy dialogue as to how to best address criminality. This podcast will avoid stereotypes and biases. We will endeavor to accomplish the first two goals in a way that keep you, the listener, interested and even entertained. And now, the host of The Criminologist, Joseph Arvidsson.
Thank you. You're all too kind. Hello, and welcome to episode 51 of The Criminologist Podcast. Happy to have you all with us today. In this episode, I am once again going to highlight some of the work of our friend, Dr. Durnescu, over at the University of Bucharest, specifically his core correctional skills training kit. I reached out and received my copy in the mail, and I am beyond impressed at what a great resource this is. The training kit is broken down into 6 chapters, if you will. Those being, what do we mean by effective skills, the therapeutic alliance, pro-social modeling, motivational interviewing, problem solving, and cognitive behavioral interventions. You may recall that back in episode 43, we mentioned this training kit. Also in that episode, with the assistance of client Henry Hill, we demonstrated problem solving as laid out in the training kit. Well, within this episode, I wanted to continue to highlight the training kit, and when I reviewed the remaining chapters, I decided I would highlight Dr. Durnescu's content as to pro-social modeling, theory and practice. As noted, I previously highlighted problem solving in this show from the training kit, and when I looked at the remaining content, I opted to talk to you all about pro-social modeling for a few reasons, actually. Firstly, I feel many of you who are practitioners are likely more familiar with the other silos of knowledge in the training kit. Again, those being things such as the therapeutic alliance, motivational interviewing, cognitive behavioral interventions, and as I previously highlighted, problem solving. I am not so certain, though, that pro-social modeling is trained and or understood as much by the correctional practitioner. And so I will endeavor to do just that in this episode. Let's begin by reviewing what we mean by pro-social modeling. And again, I am drawing directly from Dr. Durnescu's training kit for the following. Put simply, pro-social modeling refers to the process by which the worker acts as a positive, motivating role model in order to bring out the best in people. At the same time, pro-social modeling means challenging or confronting antisocial attitudes and behavior in a supportive and empathetic way. Or, as Dr. Chris Trotter puts it, pro-social modeling is a way in which probation officers or others who work with involuntary clients model pro-social values and behaviors in their interactions with clients. As Dr. Durnescu points out in his training kit, the theoretical underpinning of pro-social modeling is social learning theory, which demonstrates that learning could take place through observation without the learner being directly involved or suffering consequences. We talk about social learning theory all the time in risk assessment work, of course, And here we see it again. So thank you, Al Bandura. Transferring then these tenets of Al Bandura's social learning theory to prosocial modeling, we arrive at themes such as learning takes place if the learner thinks the learning is important. Learning takes place more if the learner respects the other individual. People learn better from reward than punishment. And as with the case with motivational interviewing, it's not just a switch that the practitioner can turn on and off. It is more of a way of being with another person. It's a style that the probation officer needs to develop over time. It's really an approach which has the following elements, or really prerequisites if you want to think of it that way. Develop an honest and open relationship with the client based on genuine interest and optimism. Model and encourage prosocial behavior. Discourage antisocial attitudes and behavior. Use authority in a transparent and clear manner. Describe the role of the staff in a clear and open way. Use an active working partnership with the client. And finally, treat people as individuals and respect diversity. Again, this is all from Dr. Durnescu's Core Correctional Skills Training Kit. I'm going to leave you all a link to information as far as how you can order directly this fantastic training kit within the episode notes of this podcast. All right, now let's take a look at how prosocial modeling is applied in practice by looking at its four main components. Those are identification of prosocial behavior, reward the prosocial behavior and attitudes, but also challenging or confronting of antisocial behavior, and finally, be a role model yourself. So let's take a look at those four here individually, beginning with number one, identification of prosocial behavior. Now, these could be things such as promoting victim empathy, regrets the client may have as to their offense, perhaps their desire to change, their motivation to find employment, even showing up for office visits on time. The key here is that the behavior we want to encourage must be achievable for the client. I am going to be using one of our favorite clients, Annie Wilkes, to illustrate these applications today. Unlike, though, our usual approach of modeling an entire office visit or portion of an office visit, I thought it might be a little clunky if I tried to jam all four of those components into one fluid setting. I'm therefore going to chunk these out into segments, if you will, beginning with identification of the prosocial behavior I wish to reinforce. In this instance, I've decided that the behavior of Annie that I wish to reinforce is her arriving on time for office visits as of late. This has been a problem for her in the past, but the last few times she's been very punctual, and I want to reinforce that behavior.
Mr. Arvidsson, Mrs. Wilkes is here to see you.
Wow, she's not just on time, but actually a little bit early. Okay, thank you. You know what? This would be a great opportunity to reinforce the behavior that I want to promote with her.
Again, behaviors which are achievable for the client, such as making appointments, perhaps a string of clean drug tests, or applying for a certain amount of jobs in a week, things of that nature. Next, let's look at the process of rewarding prosocial behavior. Recall our learning theories here, folks. Behavior that is ignored or not reinforced will tend to disappear. The key here is not to ignore or discount smaller things such as arriving on time or staying sober. Although some may think, well, the client's just doing what is expected of them, aren't they? Do not fall into that trap, people. Again, of those small deeds, if they're not reinforced, they're going to tend to fade away. Fortunately, most rewards can be verbal. Simple affirmations such as praise or even just a thank you go so far. Now, some other rewards may include public praise, even telling others, telling their case manager, for example, or treatment counselor, maybe handing out certificates or giving different responsibilities, little things like thank you notes or whatever other types of material awards you can think of, even recommendation letters and things of that nature. One of the easiest and also appreciated rewards is to simply decrease the frequency of office visits for a client. In looking at the characteristics of effective rewards, we know that in order for them to be successful, they need to follow the desirable behavior as soon as possible. They need to be relevant. They need to be proportional to the behavior that we want to reinforce, and they need to be predictable. Finally, the client should understand precisely which behavior the worker wishes to reinforce. Hey, Annie, come on in. Have a seat.
Hi, Joe. Thank you.
Listen, before we get started, I wanted to take a minute to tell you how much I really appreciate you being on time as of late.
Ah, thanks, Joe.
I mean it. Not only are you making appointments, but you're showing up early. That really tells me a lot as to your commitment and dedication to turning your life around.
Stop. You're going to make me blush, Joe.
In fact, as a thank you, my thought was that I could schedule a home visit for you, and next month we can conduct our session in the comfort of your living room. Save you a trip downtown, the parking headaches, and all that stuff.
Ugh, oh my God, I would absolutely love that. Thank you so much.
And there you have it. As simple as that, folks. Stop to reflect, though, on how many probation officers adapt that attitude of, well, why should I reward them for something that is expected of most people? Hopefully, we are answering that question in this episode. Our third component being highlighted as part of this pro-social modeling episode is challenging or confronting antisocial behaviors. Believe it or not, there is evidence to suggest that probation officers and even correctional officers are sometimes reluctant to use confrontation. This reluctance is likely based on the presumption that confrontation will taint or harm the quality of the relationship in a negative way. However, this is simply not true. Actually, there is evidence which suggests that using confrontation in a respectful and assertive way can actually enhance the relationship. Listen, all probation officers have dealt with clients who rationalize and minimize and justify their behaviors. It is key to react to these antisocial rationalizations and minimizations and justifications in a manner which shows the client that you disagree with them. You want to do this in a way which shows the client, look, I understand you, I accept you, but I disagree with that behavior. Let's head on back to Annie Wilkes.
So speaking of the hassles of having to come see you downtown and the pain in the ass with parking in this city, I actually found a meter like 5 minutes left on it. I know we usually take more than that amount of time, but I figured I would roll the dice since the parking spot was just too sweet to pass up.
Annie, I realize that parking in the city is pretty cutthroat, but Taking a chance on getting a ticket over a nice parking spot was not a wise decision. What else could you have done in that situation?
I guess I could have parked in my normal spot across the river and jogged over the bridge like I usually do.
Parking in your usual spot would have been a less risky choice.
Yeah, because now I'm going to be anxious about getting out of here without a ticket. So next time, I guess I'll park where I normally do.
Again, as simple as that. Here we also talk about feedback that relies on empathy, active listening, and or those good old motivational interviewing skills. Show the client what went wrong in their behavior and how it could be changed. Finally, our fourth component of pro-social modeling, which is be a role model yourself. We know from Al Bandura's work with social learning theory that individuals learn through observation, and that if the person they're observing is liked and respected, the influence on the learner is even stronger. And we know that this influence can go in either direction, pro-social or antisocial, depending on the behavior being modeled. Which begs the question, what can the probation officer do to be a positive role model? Well, as I just said, if the PO is not liked or respected, that really nullifies their influence. And simply acting as a professional goes a long way towards this. For example, keeping appointments with clients. And don't keep them waiting in the waiting room if they show up a little bit late. I recall a story from a probation officer who has long since retired that told me once that his policy was if a client showed up 10 minutes late for their appointment, he'd make them wait 10 minutes in the waiting room. If they showed up 30 minutes late for an appointment, he'd make them wait 30 minutes before coming out to get them. Which again is so counterintuitive to everything we know now. Sally Cherry, who I've referenced a lot because she is cited in Dr. Durnescu's training kit quite a bit, notes that probation officers who wish to be positive role models should demonstrate the following: respect for the individual, respect for the law and rules, punctuality, reliability, in other words, I do what I said I would do, consistency, treating the clients in the same situation in the same manner, fairness, and assertiveness. Now, none of this suggests that the probation officers are simply supposed to show up and be Mary Poppins. Rather, they should simply model pro-social behavior while challenging antisocial behavior and attitudes.
A quick break from the show to give a shout out to our friends at APHIS, the American Institute for the Advancement of Forensic Studies. APHIS is a professional organization dedicated to uniting the forensic communities of criminal justice, education, law, medicine, and psychology. APHIS is a leader in building relationships within the forensic community, locally and nationally. The mission of the American Institute for the Advancement of Forensic Studies is to provide quality education, training, consultation, and research in the forensic studies to professionals and students. APHIS is a leader in connecting members with one another to help facilitate professional growth, increased competency, and awareness in forensic mental health studies. For details as to upcoming training events, webinars, or publications, please visit them at www.aiafs.com. And now, back to the show.
As noted, this entire episode was really exclusively drawn from the great work of Dr. Durnescu and his Core Correctional Skills Training Kit. If you would like to order your copy, which you should, you can go to the website corecorrectional.eu. That's Core Correctional, C-O-R-E, Correctional, corecorrectional.eu. If you click on that link, it's going to pull you up to a site, which I'm literally doing right now. And you'll see you can choose from either the English version or the Romanian version. If you click on the language version you like, you'll get some more insights into what the manual explores, who the guide is really intended for, which, as he says, probation officers, students, teachers, researchers, even volunteers and mentors can find value in this. Again, Dr. Durnescu is a professor at the University of Bucharest, their Faculty of Sociology and Social Work. He teaches and conducts research in the fields of probation and prison. He's just an amazing individual. I've had a chance to speak with him. Speaking of which, I am endeavoring to get him on the podcast to talk more about his training kit. And as to future guests, I am excited to tell you about a few of the folks who are also scheduled to be appearing on the show in the coming weeks. We are going to be joined by Gethin Jones, who's going to be connecting with us over in the United Kingdom. Gethin is founder of Unlocking Potential. He is a professional speaker, a trainer, a coach. He has some amazing life experiences to share with us. You're not going to want to miss this upcoming episode with Gethin Jones. We are also scheduled to be interviewing Dr. Lila Kazmian, and she is at the John Jay College of Criminal Justice. I am personally really excited to speak with her because amongst her specialties, of course, including criminology, is really research around desistance from crime, which, as you know, is a passion of the show. So I'm super excited about that upcoming interview as well. And I'm also very excited to be speaking shortly with Dr. Jeffrey Ian Ross. He is a criminologist, professor, scholar, and consultant. He's currently teaching at the University of Baltimore, and his expertise ranges from policing to corrections to political crime, even some neat stuff around street culture, graffiti, and street art. So you're not going to want to miss my interview with Dr. Jeffrey Ross coming up in the next few weeks. Back next week with a fresh episode. In the meantime, you may contact the show or reach out to us through our website, theparagongroup.llc.com, for training or presentations as to evidence-based practices or implementation science, or, of course, the topic of desistance from crime. If you have questions or comments as to this podcast, feel free to contact the show through our email at thecriminologistpodcast@gmail.com. That's thecriminologistpodcast@gmail.com. Remember to follow us through our Facebook page or Instagram pages, The Criminologist Podcast. New fun images are being added all the time to those feeds. You don't want to miss out. The Criminologist Media Group is also on Twitter at Crim Media Group, CRM Media Group, for the Criminologist Media Group Twitter handle. You can also connect with me, Joseph Arvidsson, on LinkedIn, and follow both the Criminologist Podcast and the Paragon Group on our LinkedIn pages. Lastly, if you have not already done so, check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Criminologist, for additional content as to the themes of this podcast. Merchandise is available. Reach out if you're interested. And if you believe in what we're doing on the show, if you're part of the movement, please spread the word. Tell a friend or a coworker or a colleague about us. Ask them to subscribe to the show. And of course, do so if you've not already done so yourself. And always remember, folks, there's no them. There's only us.
It's not nearly as bad as it looks. I'm also a nurse. Now, don't be afraid. You've got a lot of recovering to do. Yeah, well, it's a theory.
The Criminologist Podcast is a production of the Paragon Group, LLC. For speaking engagements, interviews, program design, training opportunities, or to contact the host, please visit us at theparagongroup.llc.com. Click on the Contact Us tab in the upper right-hand side of the page. Be sure to give us a 5-star review, and thanks for listening.
The thoughts, statements, and opinions of the host and cast members do not necessarily reflect the views of their employers and are those of the host and cast themselves. Any discussion regarding client statements, behaviors, actions, or crimes are purely fictional and are used only for the purposes of example. Any examples that could be deemed to be related to an actual individual or individuals are incidental.